How you doing, YouTube? Matt, Massive Beer Reviews, back with yet another review. We have a little bit of white label beer. Love me some white labels. Those white labels make beers taste better. Didn't you know that? It is Monday Night Brewing. It's their Sympathy Weight, which we've already done, but it's their apple brandy barrel aged wee heavy Scotch ale, 12%. Now, first things first. I reviewed Sympathy Weight. It was a bourbon barrel aged, or it was a maple bourbon barrel aged wee heavy. I liked it. It was a little bit dry for me, but it was a nice beer. But I really dug a lot of what Monday Night has done barrel aging wise. Like I said, the wee heavy was just a little bit too dry for me. This, there was one Kilt, something along those lines. It was just their base bourbon barrel aged wee heavy, and both of those just came off a little bit too dry for me. So I'm kind of excited to give this a whirl, but I'm also kind of curious to see what's what in here. Now, you would say, what do you mean what's what? It says an apple brandy barrel aged wee heavy Scotch ale, but is it the bourbon barrel aged, maple bourbon barrel aged wee heavy, then apple brandy barrel aged? Is it double barrel aged, or is it just that same wee heavy in apple brandy barrels? I'm gonna kind of guess it's the latter, just because that's a lot of time and effort that would go into that. But anyway, so the other thing I wanted to talk about too was this is, you know, like I said, white label stuff. There's actually like signatures on here. It looks like it's printed on the label. It's not actually signatured, but all in all, the label itself is pretty cool. I've always dug Monday Night's Brewing, especially their kind of like a textured kind of labels. I dig it, but this one's very nondescript. It's the big tie, you know, that white label shit that makes everything taste better, and then some signatures. But they sent it in a fancy box with a tie in a fancy box. Yeah, they sent it off in a box, and I don't know what happened, but the box got absolutely destroyed in transit. So you can see a nice, sweet Monday Night Brewing box there. But the beer is fine, which is all that really matters. So what I'm guessing was this was in a fancy box, and this tie was kind of around it like this in some way, and that's how they were kind of doing it, and doing something like that. But anyway, yeah. Just so you know, Aaron Williams is the gentleman who sent me Monday Night stuff, and he sends a couple other people Monday Night stuff, but sends me a butt ton of it. But I appreciate the tie. It's actually not that bad of a tie. I'd probably wear those at some time. Van Heusen, mind you, it's not a Monday Night brand. Come on, get in your game there, fucking Monday Night. But it's a joke, by the way. But yeah, I am a stone cold sucker for apple brandy barrels. So yeah, shit's about to get real. What can I say? So yeah, let's do this. Where did I put my bottle opener? She be right here. I already went over the label. I dig it quite a bit. And like the last couple of notes that he sent me, they're a bit more personalized than they were in the past. And this one, he goes out of his way to be like, you don't have to review this. Don't feel like you have to review it. Just enjoy it. But I just can't help but review shit. It's just what I do. So what do we have going on right now? Looks very similar to the previous ones I had. And by that I mean, you know, the color's spot on. You know, it's not super uber dense black, but you get that rich mahogany on the pour, but it looks black in the glass. But it had that kind of thinner head on it. A bit more rocky head that dissipated really quickly. So very similar in looks to the previous Sympathy Weights. Oh, proper glassware. You probably got a bigger glass considering it's 750. But, yeah, proper glassware. Let's see if we can get a nose. Okay, we're off to a good start here. I think, okay, so leading into this, you know, that big whole spiel I did at the beginning that you guys get annoyed at, I was like, you know, is it the bourbon barrel aged maple one and then brandy barrel aged, or is it just brandy barrel aged? I'm pretty sure this is the bourbon maple one, then brandy barrel aged, because I'm getting a maple syrup component off it. Yeah, I'm getting a rich, sweet vanilla. I'm definitely getting a sweetness that isn't just like a rich residual sugar sweetness. I'm getting something that is outside of that, the added sweetness that I believe could be that maple. I don't get much as far as brandy barrel. I get a soft graininess. It's almost like a cereal grain, which I usually don't get on darker beers, especially wee heavies. It's more like kind of like a double IPA thing, to be perfectly honest with you. So rich sweetness, vanilla, a little bit of soft maple, cereal grains. It's a sweet beer. It's a rich beer. Doesn't smell super dense. Poured way too much in this glass, so it's kind of hard to get a swirl going on. But once I get that swirl, then it opens up a little bit more. So I get a little bit of that soft kind of apple brandy, a little bit of that Calvados vibe, a little bit of smoky kind of maltiness. So, yeah, even if you're going to spill some, give your beers a whirl. So yeah, with that swirl, you just get a little bit more roasted toastiness, a little bit darker richness from the beer, and it's not as simple and singular. But smells nice. Like I said, both the wee heavies that I had from them came off a bit dry for me. You're talking about, hypothetically, based off of what I smell, maybe some double barreling going on. Apple brandy barrels tend to skew a little bit sweeter. That might temper a little bit of the dryness. We're going to dive in. Cheers. Okay. It's still a very dry beer. Almost like effervescent cola vibes. It stops short of being that big, huge, dry component that I got on previous ones, but it's getting there. You're definitely getting there. And what that does is it kind of makes the beer itself. It's a combination of mouthfeel being like soda, being like cola, combined with that soft dryness. It makes the beer drinkable, but thin. It comes off a bit thin. You're talking about a big, huge, 12% wee heavy ale aged in brandy barrels. I want a little bit of heft. I want a little bit of chewiness to it. Not really getting that there. You actually do get a nice, rich, soft apple brandy vibe off of it. I'm not going to say it's kind of bursting with apple brandy bits and pieces, if you will, but at the same time, you do get this added component. It's a little bit easier to get based off of remembering the other two beers, which I did about a month ago, so they're still relatively fresh in my mind. That adds a sweetness and adds a layer of depth to the beer that I think kind of brings it home for me. Ends up being a bit more richer, a bit more seductive, a bit more sultry than the way the other two came off. Listen, I just did my best of year-end of beers, and Monday Night Brewing's their Last Will and Testament, I believe it was a Bourbon Barrel Aged Old Ale, was on that list. So they know how to make a really aged, well-barreled beer. And I've had some great stuff from them. It's just the wee heavies, I think the base itself isn't my favorite base beer of all time. And I think that leads into every single iteration after that. Whether it be the just straight bourbon, whether it be the maple bourbon, whether it be the apple brandy, which I believe is the bourbon barrel aged maple version in the apple brandy barrels. For me, and this is just me, again, beer subjective. I'm not calling it a flaw. I'm not calling it negative. I'm just saying it comes off a bit too dry for me. And every step along the way, like the bourbon, too dry. Bourbon maple, too dry, but not as dry as the previous one. And apple brandy with that bourbon and maple, getting better. So every time you throw something at it, a little bit sweeter, a little bit more outside of the base beer, it gets a little bit better for me. So what that tells me is that the base beer is probably not for me. But that doesn't mean it's not for you. And I'm not trying to just say that just to kind of skew this review into, or steer it, I guess you would say, into an area that makes it sound nice. Is that there's a difference between a beer being a negative beer or a badly made beer, and there's a difference between a beer that you don't like that's made well. I believe it's made well, it's just not made well for my particular tastes. And while this one gets much closer, and it's quite tasty, quite nice, this glass is not going to go undrank. It's also, I believe, I'm a sucker for apple brandy barrels, so when I'm left not wowed I tend to come up a little bit kind of like, sad face. But yeah, it's a fun beer. It's tasty. It's nice. Comes off a bit too dry for me. Apple Brandy shows well. I believe this is double barrel aged version just based off of zero research and based off taste, because I do feel like I get a maple component and a little soft bourbon off of it. But yeah, listen, let's cut to the chase. Is it one of the better double barrel aged beers I've had this late? Nah, it's not going to get in the upper echelon, and I don't even know if it's going to get in the conversation, but it's a fun beer. But if you like What Will You Like It? If there's so many sweet beers out there, this is kind of like a perfect kind of middle ground for a lot of people. I think the dryness combined with it being a really sweet beer, which it is, I think it might work for a lot of people. Just for me, when I'm going to go all in on these big, huge, sweet beers, I kind of want them to be huge, big, and sweet, and not have that drying component kind of temper all that. I believe a lot of that dryness ends up knocking down the mouthfeel, which is a big component for me. But all in all, it's a fun beer. It's a tasty beer. It's a white label beer, because that makes it taste better. All jokes. And, yeah. If you like barrel-aged beers, you like them dry, you like dark beers, you like malt-forward beers, and you don't want something that's just overt sugar on sugar on sugar, this will do you. So there you go. Another review in the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Down there if you want to talk about it. Massive Beers if you want to check me out doing the social media stuff. Beer Massive if you want to check me out doing the whole podcasting thing. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully enjoying a nice Sympathy weight apple brandy barrel right now. And we'll see you next time. Cheers.